Hello children, welcome to Claytime with Mr. Barnes. Today I'm going to show you how to throw a bigger pot than you think you know how to throw using coils and the wheel. Okay, so come closer. We start by getting our wheel a little bit wet. I'm using a bat. I'm going to throw this down. Just like we throw everything else, we're going to start by rough centering. Then we're going to squeeze the clay up and push it down. Do that about 3 times. Okay, so one of my lovely students wants to make a cookie jar, which needs to be sort of big. And obviously this is not enough clay to make a very large cookie jar. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of flatten this out. I'm going to push it down and flatten it out a little bit. What do you think, camera woman? Is that wide enough for a base for a cookie jar?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So I'm still going to open this up. I'm going to push down in the middle just a little bit. I don't want, now with a cookie jar, it could have a flat bottom or you could trim a foot onto it. It's up to you. I think things are usually nicer with a foot, but for this project, the foot is optional. But I'm still gonna check how thick my bottom is. So my bottom's about that thick. That's thick enough that I could trim a foot if I wanted to, but I probably don't have to if I really don't want to. So I'm still gonna pull my finger along the bottom and make a flat bottom. I'm gonna come close to my edge over here. I'm gonna run my fingers along the bottom again to recompress the bottom. Make sure it's all nice. Okay. I'm gonna grab my sponge and I've got this donut shape. I'm gonna compress that donut so I'm kind of pushing down and I'm squeezing with my fingers like this into a short wall. Okay. And because I'm going to be adding coils to this, I don't want it to be too thin. So I'm going to pull up just a little bit, kind of like that. Okay. Now you have to kind of think about the shape that you want your cookie jar to be. Do you want it to be just straight up and down? Do you want it to kind of come out a little bit, right? So I think for a start, I'm going to widen this out just a little bit. And then I'm going to recompress this top. And I'm going to kind of flatten this just a little bit. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is use a torch to stiffen this up quicker. But you're going to use a hairdryer. So I'm going to stiffen this up a little bit, and then I'm going to add some coils onto it, and that's going to be part 2. So, stiffen this up a little bit. Okay, you can cut right 3 there. Coils here. I'm going to take a serrated rib and run it down each of these coils. And then I'm going to gently pick it up, come over back to my wheel. Okay. So I also kind of just spun a little bit. So this is, I sped dry this. It's kind of a soft leather hard. So it's stiff, but it's not very hard yet. Then I'm gonna take some of my extra, just some slip from my throwing. And I'll put down a little bit of slip. And then the sides that I scored together, I'm gonna so I'm gonna start by pushing this down at like a 45-degree angle, just like you do when you're building a coil pot. And I'm gonna slowly push this down. So doing it like this makes sure that I don't trap air in the clay. So you wanna make sure that your coil's a little bit longer than you think you're gonna need, and then you just pull off the extra and kind of shape that. Now I like to give it a little pat just to make sure I've got good compression on my coil. And then I'm gonna score this again. And I'm gonna grab, let's do a little slip on here. Okay, I'm gonna grab another coil. I'm gonna do the same thing. So you only want to do about 3 coils at a time. So I'll push that on. Pinch off my extra. Do a little tap. Score it. A little more slip. And my last coil. So again, I'm kind of squeezing and pinching and pushing this down as I go. Okay, now want kind of drier hands, or you can use a rib, but you need to weld these coils together before you can throw them. So I'm just kind of using my thumb on the inside and welding all of these coils together. You could use a rib too if you wanted. Gonna hold your hand on the outside and just use one of these wooden ribs that's dry to weld all of those coils together. You want to do the same thing on the outside. So I'm holding my hand on the inside and I'm using the rib on the hand on the inside, rib on the outside to smooth and weld those coils together. I want to make sure that I've got them all welded together really, really well. Now this isn't going to look very pretty right now. So get in here close. See where I've got these lines? I want to make sure that I get rid of those if I can. Okay, I'm going to use this flat side of the rib and I'm just going to, without adding any water yet, I'm very lightly touching the pot. I'm just going to go around. So I'm using really just one finger on the inside. And I'm going to kind of smooth those together a little bit more. And I'll use the rib on the top. So a very light touch, because the clay's dry, it'll want to grab your fingers and it could mess it up really easily. Just double check that I don't have any awkward little seams. So I've got one, look right here. I've got one little seam right there, so I'm gonna make sure that I push that clay together so that that seam disappears. Now I can use a little bit of water, not a lot. And I'll put a little water on the inside and the outside. The first thing I'm gonna do, pinching the top like this and pushing down a little bit, and then I'm gonna throw, so I'm squeezing just a tiny little bit, and I'm gonna throw those coils that I added together, and now I've more than doubled the height of my little pot. Now what usually happens is the top is always a little bit wonky, so take your needle tool and slowly, so put one finger on the inside, use both hands together, and you're gonna very slowly just push the needle tool in right at the top, and you'll cut off the uneven top. So you'll set that aside, and now you have an even top. Now this isn't gonna look perfectly smooth. You can make it look smoother on the outside with one of the ribs. But because it's sort of a cross between coil building and throwing, you'll get something that's still fairly uniform. And so I've started to kind of go outward. So I would stiffen this again with the hair dryer, or in my case, the torch. and then do the same process until I get it as tall and I get the shape that I want. Okay? Good. So I've added all of my coils. If I spin the wheel, you can see that this is not a perfectly, it's not as good as if you just thrown the whole thing. It's a little wobbly, but to make those little wobbles stop, all you have to do is stop spinning it. Can you see the wobbles anymore? Nod the camera like you're nodding. Like, no, you can't see them. Okay, good. All right, so I left the rim a little bit thick, and I'm gonna take a damp sponge and just kind of re-moisten this. And so what my student wanted to do was make a cookie jar. So I'm gonna put a little water down here, and I'm gonna pull that water underneath so that I know that my pot is loose on the wheel, okay? And I'm gonna take the corner, one of these corners, I'm gonna get this wet, get my rim just a little bit wet again, and I'm gonna slowly kind of halfway in the middle there, I'm just gonna push this down. And the reason I'm doing this is because my student wanted to make a cookie jar. So what I'm doing is I'm making, this is called a register for a lid. So I'm just gonna finish shaping this until I'm happy with the way it looks. That's pretty good. Okay. Then I'm gonna make the lid and I'll show you how the lid fits on. Stop recording. Okay, so I took my jar off, and these are called calipers, so you can tighten or loosen it there. I'm gonna put this as close as I can to the middle, and that's gonna give me, I'm gonna tighten this up. That'll give me the measurement that I need for the lid. So I'll set that aside. I'm gonna clean off my wheel. Throw that in my ball of clay. Probably have too much clay here, but that's fine because I can always cut off any extra clay. You're gonna do the same thing you do with everything that we throw. Pull it up and push it down about 3 times. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of push this down into a flat-ish pancake. I don't want it to be too thick. And then what I'm going to do, so I'm going to just check roughly. So it's wider right now, and that's fine, okay? What I'm going to do with some of this extra clay is I'm going to push it back towards the middle. Set it over there. And I'm going to make the knob for the lid. So you can make this knob any shape that you want. I'm going to make sort of a closed form. Yeah. I think I'm gonna do this. Okay. Now, I'm going to double check my measurement here. So I can see that I'm going to make a mark about right there. And then I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm going to trim off that little bit of extra clay. And I'm going to take the needle tool kind of underneath so I can pull all that extra clay away. And I'll do a double check on the width. It's a little bit smaller now, but that's okay because it's still kind of thick. So what I'm going to do is just soften that edge a little bit and I'll pull it out just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to let this dry now. Double check my width. Yeah, that's just about perfect. I will put a little water down again and pull that underneath until that's loose. And now I need to wait until this is sort of leather hard. Now because I made that hollow, I'm going to have to poke a hole on the inside to make sure that I don't have any air trapped in there. But that lid should fit right on top of my little cookie jar. Okay, let me cut it. Yeah, so here's the finished lidded vessel that we made with coils. So the lid, comes off. I carved out the inside so that I don't trap any air in there. Once this is a little bit drier, what you can do is kind of twist this lid in here back and forth, and that'll help it set really, really nice. But for right now, it's setting pretty well. So there you go, lidded vessel thrown with coils.